Hello, everyone. A very good afternoon. Myself, Anushri Mittal from Nasscom FutureSkills team. I welcome you all to today's session on managing stakeholders, influence, and authority. Do you guys feel that at times meeting the expectations of your boss can be daunting? Or are you unable to understand the leadership style of your boss, but maybe don't know what to do? Well, all we can say is you're not alone. As a professional, your success is driven by your ability to meet expectations along with satisfying and engaging with your boss. Therefore, in the next 60 minutes you spend with us here, our speaker, Mr. Srinivas Addepalli, who is the CEO of Global Gyan and a professional with over 20 years of experience in the industry, will help you understand techniques and tactics to understand, manage, and engage with your boss efficiently. You will also learn the secret recipe to win all differences with your boss. And he will also give you some cool tips. Mr. Srini has 20 plus years of experience in the areas of corporate strategy, M&A, business transformation, and innovation. He was earlier the Chief Strategy Officer of Tata Communications and has been a visiting faculty at IIMS and NMIMS and is the winner of ISB IV Global Case Competition 2014. He is a passionate teacher and has mentored many students and professionals in their career path. One thing that I would like to bring to everyone's notice is if you have any questions during the course of the webinar, you can share the same with us in the question box, and these will be answered by the speaker during or end of this session. Over to you, Mr. Srini.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us, and thank you, Anushri, for the introduction. I'm really excited to be part of this session. It's a topic that's dear to my heart, and in fact, just yesterday I shared with my previous bosses that I'm going to be uh, revealing all the secrets of how I dealt with them, and in fact requested if they would like to join this session. Maybe my some of my bosses are there, and of course many others who I was a boss to are also probably on this call. Welcome to every one of you. Uh, this is uh, this is a topic that irrespective of what type of a job you do, what type of work you do, this is something that is so crucial. Whatever level you are at, the ability to influence others without having to resort to authority, I think is so critical for all managers, entrepreneurs, students. I did get some messages from a few young people saying that I am a student. Can I attend this? Yes, indeed. This is something that you have to learn on your own mostly. And what I'm trying to do over the next hour or so is to share some of my own experiences, some secrets, some tips of my how I have dealt with this and how I've seen others, very successful people dealing with this and sometimes also failing. So here's a sharing of learnings, observations. There isn't any perfect truth in what I'm going to say. You can choose to agree or disagree. In fact, if you disagree and would like to share contrary opinions or views, I would really welcome it. We're going to use the chat window extensively. Uh, this is going to be a conversation, and I will bring some content to you to the table. But equally, I would like to hear your points of view, and therefore we will have a conversation, and I urge all of you to share your thoughts, your comments as I ask some questions. Do share your views in the chat window. If you have specific questions that you would like me to address, you could use the questions tab, but the chat window is a place where we can have our conversation. As a kind of a quick introduction to who I am and the organization that I represent, Global Gyan Academy is a firm that works with corporates and professionals in providing practical business and leadership capability development. And the way we bring this development and this capability development is from people from the industry, those with illustrious industry experience, leadership experience, bring all their content in a rigorous manner with the academic rigor that is necessary. And that's what we bring to all of you. We are extremely proud to be a partner with FutureSkills Prime and doing courses on their platform and of course separately. We have worked with over 16,000 professionals in the last 4 years. So more than my 20 years of corporate experience, I've also learned a lot about these experiences of influencing in the last 4 years, where we have directly and indirectly engaged with thousands of professionals like you. So the first thing that we're going to do, and I want to quickly get a pulse of what's happening in the audience. So I'm going to launch a poll, so you can you'll get a poll on your screens. I want you to answer for me, in your college education or in your corporate life or whatever education that you've been in, have you received any formal learning on how to manage your boss? Training programs or a course that you got in college, anything where you got formal learning on managing your boss? Okay, so I'm just going to give it 5-10 more seconds for every one of you to answer. So we're getting pretty much wonderful responses. There's just a handful of you who haven't answered the poll yet, so please do provide your response. Okay, superb. I'm going to close the poll now. If you haven't answered, and if you would like to share any experience, please do use the chat window. So the poll answer is quite revealing and also highly expected for me, is that 91% of you said no. 9% of you have been lucky. I would love to hear in the chat window how you learned, what you learned about this topic. But 91%, just think about it, 9 out of 10 professionals like you have never been taught how to manage their boss. Whereas the most important person in your professional life at any point in time is your boss. The person with whom you probably do the majority of your work, the one who has the biggest influence on your career at any point in time is your boss. And we are not taught how to work with our bosses. There are courses on leading everyone else, but not about how do we engage with the most important person. And by the way, in the course of this session, there are two things that I'm going to be mindful of. When I refer to the boss, I'm only taking it in a very strict professional sense. We all have different types of bosses at our respective homes and in personal lives. We won't get into that aspect. So it's only professional bosses. And the second thing is, I will use the gender terms of he and she replaceably. I don't mean to prefer one versus the other. It's going to be something that I'll consciously try to balance out. But if I don't, just remember there's no gender bias yet on what I'm going to be talking about. So what are we going to talk about in the course of this session? So the first half of what I will be covering is going to be about influence per se. Without getting into the specifics of how to deal with the boss, what is influence, and particularly how do we influence without using authority? That's the the first half of our conversation. And the second half will be about the boss. Now, who is this boss? Is there a way to understand where is this boss coming from, and more importantly, what do we do to manage the boss? Okay, so that's the agenda. As I mentioned, do use the chat window and the questions tab for any conversations that we will have. So let's begin with a question from my side. What is influence? In your view, what is influence? What are we trying to do when we say influence? What does it mean? Use the chat window. What does influence mean to you? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Okay, so I'm seeing some. Okay, so I'm seeing this in the getting others to see your perspective, ability to convince others. Yeah, convince others. Yeah, okay. Creating positive or negative impact. Wonderful. Persuade someone towards something. That's a very good point. An image of your personality and attitude along with behavior. Okay, good, good. To make an impression. Yeah, getting the job done. Yeah, getting the job done. Then getting the job done is so important. Ability to make others understand our point of view, persuasion. Influence is a good thing. That's right. Now, of course, if used for the right things, but and get people motivation, superb. So there are really, and there are many more, as I can see the comments that are there. They're all really basically looking at persuading others or convincing others. And I'm hearing this phrase, point of view. Okay, that's very important. But I like what there's one comment here, and I'm sure there are others who have said something similar. But I think this is in very simple English. I think this answers the question of what is influence. To make a person do what you want to be done. I think that's such a simple the simple statement, but it really symbolizes what we want to achieve with influence. Is to make someone else, whoever we want to influence, do. The word do is very important, because the goal is to create an action, right? We want to change usually people's behavior. Why do we influence people? If you're a salesperson, your influence is to get that person to buy something from you, to give you a purchase order, to buy something, to go to the shop and place an order, or go to the website and buy something. When you're doing sales and marketing as a function, your role of influence is that. If you're someone in operations or trying to influence your leaders, usually it is to get them to approve something, to get them to sign a check, to give you some budget for some capital, capex or opex, or give you some people, so that your project can go forward, right? So when we influence others, our goal is to get them to do something. It is the toughest, by the way, form of communication, when we want to influence, because we want to make them do something. Now, if that is what influence is, to get people to do something what we want done, I think that's a good addendum to that statement from Ravi Dhote. No, thank you for that. It is not just do, but do what you want to be done, or what you want them to do. I think that's a simple understanding of what we are trying to achieve. Okay, and that do and what you want done can be different things depending on the role that you play, the level at which you're in. What you want done could vary. Doesn't matter, but we still want the audience, the person, to do that. Now, how do we make that happen? How do we get them to do what we want them to do? And this is where I'm going to talk about, how does influence work? How do we get people to do things? Why do people do things and change what they do? Because often influence also assumes that we want them to change. If they were already doing what we want them to do, then that is not influence, right? The influence means we want them to do what we want them to do, but they're not currently doing it. So there is also change in behavior that influence is about. So if you have to come up with a simple explanation of what is influence, it is to change people's behavior. We want them to change their behavior towards what it ought to be or what we want it to be. Hopefully that is in the right direction, but it's about changing people's behavior. And how do you change people's behavior is the key question that we're going to be answering in the context of influence. Okay, so how does changing behavior, getting people to do something, happen? Now, when we think about people's behaviors, what they do, their actions, is like the tip of the iceberg. Okay, what they are doing, their behavior is the outward expression, what is visible to everyone else. But there is a lot that is hidden underneath behavior, underneath action, which actually causes behavior to happen. And change in behavior requires this underneath the hidden aspects of what's going on in that person's mind to be changed. So when we think about influence and we think about changing someone's behavior, it doesn't happen because we tell them to do something. If you told someone do this and they did it, then it's not influence. Influence can't happen because you just told them to do something. Influence is really about changing other parts of what's going on that therefore cause the behavior to change. So what are these things? The most kind of almost close to the surface and why people do things and what causes people to do things is the answer to this question in their mind: what's in it for me? What do I get? And so they're kind of thinking about, if I do this, what will I get? That's a very quick motivation that drives people's behavior. Does that make sense? Do a lot of people do things because they're thinking, what do I get as a result of this? Okay, so that's the kind of the simple first driver of behavior. But it's very superficial, because what's in it for me can keep changing. As and by the way, someone else can give something slightly more, and then that person will change their behavior. So if a person's behavior is influenced through what's in it for me, that behavior change perhaps is not going to be lasting, because someone else can give something more, or something else can give them something more, and then the behavior will keep changing. So therefore this is a superficial way of changing behavior. What's in it for me, or the thought process of what's in it for me. The second slightly deeper question that people think about when they're thinking about what do I do, what should my behavior be, is how will I appear to others? What will this make me look like? Because all of us are concerned about the perception that we create around us, to our near and dear, to our colleagues, to our friends, to society in general. So a lot of times behavior is influenced by the thought process of how will this appear to others, equally to me, but more often, how will this appear to the outward world? What will others think about me as I do certain things? And is this how I want to be seen? Is this how I want to be seen? Is the kind of the second, and this is slightly more deeper because this doesn't change so quickly. Of course, what is acceptable and what isn't, what is popular and what isn't, does change, periodically and sometimes very rapidly. But this is a little more lasting than the first one of what do I get if I do this. But the most deep-rooted question that causes us to think about our behavior and therefore decide whether we want to change it or not is this question of what do I believe? Is this what I must do? Is this right for me or wrong for me as per my own beliefs? Should I do it or not? And that is the most deep-rooted cause of behavior and behavior change. Many times, many people, for a lot of decisions of behavior, don't go to that third level. They're often deciding based on the first level, the what's in it for me. But as I mentioned, that type of behavior and that type of behavior change is not lasting. So the deeper you go into thinking about your own behavior, if you are the one who's behaving, or if you want to change someone's behavior, you want to get to real change in behavior, you have to go to that third level. But all the three are important. It's not that and there are reasons why you would use each of them, and we'll come to that. But understand that behavior changes is influenced at these three levels. Any questions or comments at this? Do you understand the three levels of what causes behavior to change? Because then we'll go into how do we work with these things. So I'm just going to also okay, so there's a couple of comments which I will pick up over here. So you can't see, if you can't see the chat box, sorry, then just use the questions box. I'm looking at the questions box right now, so so your comments will get captured from there. I can see one interesting question: how does coaching differ from influencing? You know. Uh, Terminology apart, but coaching is not necessarily to influence someone. Coaching could take place at the third level, helping people form their beliefs. But coaching is not necessarily getting them to do what you want them to do. In some ways, coaching, if I have to keep it simple, is getting them to do what they want to do rather than what you want them to do. So if you have to distinguish between coaching and influencing, that's how I would distinguish. Both can result in behavior change, but influencing is a little more selfish in that sense, or can be selfish because I want to get it done for my work, whereas coaching is usually selfless, and it is to help them discover what they want to do. Now, of course, both will use at the third level. If the work happens at the deepest level, coaching and influencing can work very similarly. Hope that that works. Influencing works well for positive or negative things. Yeah, because what you want them to do can be a wrong thing, and there are many people who can influence you to do wrong things. So influence, if used well, can have both positive and negative outcomes. It's really what do you choose? What do you choose, and what is your goal? But both are possible. Okay, so yeah, so there's some examples. So right now, this is for all types of influences, not just for a boss. This is something not just for the boss. It's for any type of influence, right? So I'm first going to talk about influence in general, and then we'll get into the boss issues shortly. Can you elaborate on what do I believe, or give some examples on the types of beliefs? Okay, so examples of what do I believe. For instance, everyone has a sense of what is right or wrong. For instance, it may not agree with what someone else thinks is right or wrong, but each of us perhaps has a sense of what is right or wrong, what I must do or I mustn't do. How is that developed? It's developed through years of our experiences. It is a culture that we are exposed to. It is what we grow up with often, and that's why it is the deepest, because it is an accumulation of our experiences, our the good and bad experiences. Therefore, the learnings of what works, what doesn't work, what should I do. So these are deep rooted. You could think of them as culture. This could think of them as your values, for instance. morals. So a lot of childhood education, etc., has a big influence on what people tend to believe for the rest of their life. What parents and teachers have taught you has a big influence on it. So, and we therefore have those beliefs, and it can be as simple as, oh, this is what men must do and this is what women must do. That could be a belief, and it can be a deep-rooted belief of what type of a job a man must do and a woman must do. I'm just giving that as an example, and it may have been formed over years of conditioning, or culture, or experiences, and so on. Do you think beliefs can be changed, considering they're very ingrained? It's not, but beliefs can be changed. As one of you, later, in fact, commented that like Gandhiji influenced tons of people. So there are many good examples of where beliefs are changed. And even if you don't take it at the philosophical level, let me give you an example. Okay, and this is an example of influence, and where it happens because of belief change. Many of us believed that if you want to buy something, you must see it, touch it, experience it before you put your money on the table. That I must get the thing in my hand before I pay for it, and I have tested it or checked it, is a belief, because that's how shopping was done for years. We always shopped like that. That's what shopping meant to us. Buying things meant that. And it's not just about, oh, risk reward. It's not just, oh, am I getting it? No, it's a belief. That's how shopping is done. Would you ever think that you can buy vegetables without sorting them yourself and touching them? No, most Indians believe that that's how shopping must be done. However, over the last many years, e-commerce companies have helped us change our beliefs. They have changed our beliefs, many of us, most of us. Sometimes change in beliefs happens because of pressure. Many of us have changed a lot of our beliefs in the last 1 year because of some things that have changed. So beliefs can be changed. Either it comes through a certain systematic approach that is working towards changing their beliefs, or sometimes pressure, crisis often causes deep changes in beliefs. So many times you create crisis. So you can look at those as examples. Yeah, can you change the belief system of a boss? Let's come to that later. Is influencing similar to manipulating? Yeah, I know a lot of people think influencing is a negative word, because influence. I remember the first time I heard the word influence was when we needed to get an admission into a school, and it was very difficult to get an admission into that school. This is when I was a kid, and people, my parents and everyone, were talking about, oh, only if you have influence you can get admission in that school. So yeah, influence is seen as having undue advantage or manipulation, but that's not how it is. The word itself doesn't necessarily mean that, but we must not see it that way. I think influence is really about building change. So if again, going back to example of Gandhiji or anyone else, this is about influence. How do you get people to change their behavior? And often by working at the deepest level of beliefs. Okay, so um, yeah, Arnab, you're right. The three are a logical sequence, and that's why they are logically going deep, right? So the superficial level to the deepest level. Yes, there is a logical sequence to it. Okay, now therefore, if we have to these deal at three levels. So the first one is really almost like a cost benefit analysis. So what's in it for me is somebody doing a cost benefit analysis of saying, if I do this, what will I get? That's a cost benefit analysis approach to influence. The how will I appear is really if you now, I'm now talking about the influencer, not the influenced. If you are the influencer, if the change has to occur and change happens at the first level, of what's in it for me, then very simple, you can provide some form of a cost benefit analysis. The second level is, how will I appear? Now, someone is worried about the appearances and the social aspects of it. Role modeling is and I'm going to talk about each of these in more detail. But role modeling is is kind of the method that is used to drive that influence, and we'll speak about them. And the third, which is what do I believe, is really about creating new beliefs. That's the toughest, and we'll look at that. Okay, so these are the three influencing methods, and we'll just look at how to make the influence happen. So for the first level, the influence happens at the layer of rules, systems, and incentives, and we'll discuss some examples of how that happens. The second layer is influence through credibility, the credibility of the influencer. So you bring credibility, and which is what causes them to, because yes, it is socially acceptable. This is something that I want to be like you. It's about emulating the person, and therefore being influenced. The third one, as I mentioned, is really deep rooted and happens through culture, lived experiences, and the way to change it is through rituals and stories. So that's just a quick summary. I'll touch on each one of them, and I'll look for examples from each of you as we speak about it. So the first one, right, is really about applying logic. So as you can see, it's about applying logic towards finding the answers. Right? How do you get people to be influenced is a logical approach. So can you give me some examples of how you can apply logic to the question of what's in it for me? What can you do if you have to influence someone to do something? What are some methods that you would use to to get people to do what they must do, using that first level, uh, giving them the incentive, the what's in it for me? Any examples? Yeah, okay, so like SWOT type of thing. Yeah, okay, looking at some analysis, so analytical approach. Yeah, based on data, logical. Yeah, okay, so usually data is very important. That's right. I would have loved to write it down, but no, the platform, I'm finding it difficult to write down your points. So I'm just going to read out some of the important points. So hopefully you're getting some of the key points that I'm sharing over here. Any others? So let's look at some more that have come in. Yeah, okay. So giving awareness, knowledge, proof, superb. Comparison, well-researched facts, explaining what's in it for me, results, yeah, quote examples to show the benefits if you follow. Superb. These are all really wonderful points I'm looking at. Yeah, there's like data-driven, show the business case. Yeah, that's the good one. Result orientation. Let's see some more coming in. Lots of points coming over here. Influencing the child to do the homework. So how do you influence the child to do the homework? Giving positive outcomes of studying well. Yeah, but it's also about saying, if you do the homework, I'll give you a chocolate. That's also about influence. When you give them something, either you promise them something later, or sometimes it's also immediate gratification when they're told that this is what you will get if you do something. Rewards, yeah, rewards. A lot of you have said, or simply get mad. That's a good one. Yeah, but that's true. So if I have to just quickly and there's some some other points that that are not there, but I had anticipated these and written them. So rules and policies, for instance, in corporates, here's what you must do, here's what you must not do. That's a very clear thing. It's rules and policies. So you want to change behavior, change the rule. You must come to work every Saturday. The employee doesn't want to. You want to change their behavior, make it a rule. Either they'll quit, but most likely they will grudgingly, but they'll come. So you change their behavior. It's not influence really, but saying if the goal is changing behavior, then these all work, right? Rules and policies, giving them some commission or rewards, incentives, risk return. Saying no, it's like that child thing, saying if you do this, this is what you could get. There's no promise. So the cost benefit or the incentive is often the immediate gratification, but there's often also, there's no guaranteed gratification, but there is some degree of a promise. The success story is saying, yeah, this is what could happen. Like for the child, you'll do well in life, therefore you must put in this effort, right? So the effort for promised dreams kind of thing. And that point about get mad is create the fear of punishment. Now this is influence because it is achieving the goal that we had set out, which is to get people to do what we want them to do. But you'll realize that all of these or most of these are done when you have authority. In order to do these, you must be in a position of authority, and this influence is happening only through authority. For you to be able to set the rules or policies or to give them incentives, the example of, for the child, the parent is in a position of authority. If you are in an HR and you say I will change the rules for how employees must work or what hours they work or whatever, you can only do it if you have the authority that is granted to you because of your role. The fear of punishment again comes from authority. So we see that the first level that we are looking at is coming from formal stated authority. So while it is, and therefore when you influence through authority, there's a good chance it will get done, but it's also a good chance that that change is not permanent. That change is not actually resulting in any habit. It is a change that will be followed because somebody has forced me to do for either something that I get, therefore I'll do it. But if someone else gives me, someone else says, this company has only 5-day working, that person may very quickly leave. That change will not be permanent. I may not accept that change. So I wanted to point this out, that when you influence with authority, the advantage is that you will get results very likely, but those results will not be lasting. Those results will need constantly authority to be exerted. So you give someone incentive to do something, that incentive becomes the norm. Then you have to give further incentives for new change to happen. So change doesn't happen because they want to change. It is happening because they're being motivated to change. So when you influence through authority, through a lot of logic, the thing is that someone else can change the logic relatively easily, and therefore it is not lasting. So the next two that we will look at are the type of influences where you don't necessarily need authority. Even when you don't have authority, you are trying to influence someone who is more senior to you. You are trying to influence your peer over whom you have no control, the equivalent. How do you influence them without having to exert authority? So the second type of influence that we spoke about is influence through credibility. Okay. Can you think of any examples of how influence happens through credibility? This is to address that thought process, that how will I appear, right? That's what that your audience, your person who you want to influence is thinking, is that how will this appear to others? No, that is what they are worried about, and about their behavior. That is what will influence their behavior. How will your credibility play a role in influencing them. Okay, so let's look at let's look at some of the comments. Practice what you preach. Superb. No, that's a great that's a great phrase. Yeah, when you practice what you preach, case studies kind of thing. So yeah, again, you're not telling the client that I'll give you a discount to buy, but I'm showing you my credibility of having done it, and you influence them through your expertise, your credibility having done it. So case studies in a selling context, case studies is a good way of demonstrating credibility. Okay, what else? Then it should be give and take, but give and take is a bit of the first one, because sometime at some point you'll stop giving, then you won't get, right? The idea here is to be able to get even without necessarily having to give in return. So having done the job earlier successfully, okay, yeah, so uh, make others do what you want get done. But the uh, yeah, okay, so I'm seeing this is a good one. Your past track record of demonstrated success. Yes. Credibility. Share how you have done it earlier in a different setup. That's right. Yeah, okay. uh, Trust, loyalty. Correct. Yeah. So some of it's really about why do people sometimes do things, and this is best in the corporate setup. This is about in a pure corporate sales type environment. Your case studies. We are ranked #1 on quality parameters. What are you trying to do? You are trying to influence them by saying, if you are with me, or if you do things that I do, you will be amongst the best. You are trying to ride on your credibility to get them to share your credibility, because everybody wants to look good. And if I work with someone else who is credible, or if I buy something or be part of that story, it rubs off on me. Similarly, in a little more personal, but personal/professional lives, all of us have idols, right? So if you think about, for me, for instance, I would say, Steve Jobs and Ratan Tata are my professional idols, business-wise idols. I would I would do many of the things that I have picked up from them, even though they may not tell me to do those things. Why? Because I consider them as my role models. I will try to emulate my way of doing things, my behavior, to kind of be like them, because I respect them. And in that sense, they're influencing me, and often that type of influence becomes wide. It is not necessarily they're influencing me. I've never met Steve Jobs, but I couldn't say he has influenced a lot of my thinking and a lot of my behavior. Did he try to personally influence me? No. So credibility not only has the ability to influence people who are around you, but can, if done well, have a bigger, wider impact. Okay, which is, yeah, I see words like reputation, goodwill. That's right. So as someone said, be the change. So you have to lead the change. If you want to influence someone and those people are the type who like to emulate. So if you are a if you don't have authority on someone and you want everybody to come to office on time, so let's just say it's meeting of your peers, and you want people to start the meeting on time. What's the way you show up? You show up on time every time. Slowly, people, if they are the types who don't want to look bad, no, if they don't want to look bad, if they're conscious of how their appearance is in a group, they will start following you. But it only works for those who want to emulate you. Therefore, you also is not just about leading the change, but becoming credible enough, known enough that people want to emulate you. So this is where it's also about building your thought leadership. So you have to achieve thought leadership. You have to demonstrate your success, uh, and this is both for internal audiences and external audiences. If someone asks me, why should anybody listen to what I say? No, or nobody listens to what I say. That's a better question. Nobody listens to what I say. My response would be, are you worthy of being listened to? If you are worthy of being listened to because you have created, you've published something on that topic, you are known as an expert on that topic, then people will listen to you, what you have to say on it. Hopefully you are hearing me in this session because somewhere I have built some credibility about who I am, about my work as a teacher, as a speaker, as someone who works on leadership topics. That some of you may pick up these and say, "Oh, okay, let me let me emulate some of these ideas. Let me follow some of these ideas." In a way, I am trying to influence you through credibility. And if any of you who, because you respect me or you feel that what you've heard from me is worthy of emulation, you will follow it. That would be an example of influence using credibility. I'm not putting any pressure on you, nor am I no guaranteeing it will happen. But I would say that that's an example. Having enough courage, yes. No, so someone who has to who influences uh, through credibility is often someone who's leading, who is unique, who is ahead of everybody else, right? You have to have the courage to back your own beliefs, your knowledge, and then you influence others. Yeah, there's a question about what influences and what is credible varies from geography to geography and so on. That's right. So any of these, in what the content of what will influence and how influence is perceived will vary from geography to geography. But what I'm trying to share, I would say, are reasonably generic, and that will not vary tremendously. But you go into the detail of what demonstrates credibility, what would be credibility, can vary. Somewhere credibility may only come when you start getting gray hair. People may only see credibility through gray hair, but some other groups of people may see credibility in a 18-year-old who has demonstrated through great outcomes, through published research or whatever, right? So what drives credibility is also something that you have to understand, and then make sure that you are applying the appropriate elements of that credibility. Okay, so that's on the second, which is about credibility. And what I want you to take away from this is that if you want to influence people, and particularly influence large numbers of people, you have to focus on, now, am I credible enough to be an influencer? You want to sell a consulting effort to your clients and say, I will help you transform your business, or whatever that may be. Are you credible as a consultant? When they look you up, will they find that you're an expert in this space and therefore they must pay you for it? Or are you just coming in and saying, you know what, I have some degree or I have some certificate and I want to do it, I'll do it? So even if you're a gig worker, even if you're a professional, you have to build your credibility, because that's the big way to drive sales. But if you're thinking from a sales perspective, but any other function also. Finally, and the kind of the most important and the toughest is when you have to influence through what I would call emotion, which is the third level of at a belief level. Beliefs are not driven by logic. Beliefs are also not necessarily driven based on others' beliefs. Ultimately, these are my beliefs, and these are emotional. These are in my heart. This is what I live with. These are my values. And if you have to change the emotions and the beliefs of your audience, what would you do? What are some examples that you could do? while I am looking for that answer, there's a interesting counterpoint which says that people, sometimes freshers get into managerial positions, and the only credibility they hold is the degree, and they don't really know what they must do, and yet uh, you're right, and it goes back to that earlier point about what do we hold as credible, and for years in India, but also all over the world, degrees from well-known academic institutions gave credibility to the people who held them. So they gained their credibility through the credibility of others. Now, why does a young fresher from an IIM, as you mentioned, have that credibility? Is actually the credibility of the maybe the thousands of managers who over the past 50 years from that institution, having built good credibility in the industry, is rubbing off on them. It's derived credibility and not their personal credibility, and which is what I think is changing now, is that we are no longer ready to accept credibility because of where you come from, or which institution you went to, and rather I want to know what have you achieved, what is your personal credibility, rather than where you went to, because we are now realizing that where you went to is not necessarily a guarantee of who you are. It's going to change, but you're right, it's a good point, and it's a point about how we think about credibility itself can change over time. Okay, so I'm just checking on the uh, appear religious. So no, I won't get into that in terms of changing beliefs. But yeah, you're right. By the way, now a lot of and there was a question earlier about spirituality and so on. There is there's very a lot of power in that, and you'll realize that that communication, that influence doesn't happen through logic. It is a mix of credibility and emotion. Okay, so two play a role. By the way, you can mix them up, and particularly the second and the third can be mixed. So yeah, I'll ignore the religious kind of things and look at uh, uh, passion. Okay, so if you bring passion, so your own passion can rub off on people. Okay, finding an can authoritarian leader be a good influencer? No, usually an authoritarian leader will use authority, which will go into the first category. They will create fear, they will create incentives. If you do it, I will support you. If you don't, no. So an authoritarian leader can't play in this role most of the time. Okay. Security assured, yeah. Making an emotional connect, yeah. A lot of storytelling, for instance, plays a role. So that's why, again, so if you have to learn from, now there are two places that you can learn from to think about how influence uh, uh, at an emotion level or at a belief level works. So one example we looked at is spirituality. Okay. The other example is it comes from the world of advertising, where there's a lot of good advertising doesn't try to give you either an incentive to buy by saying, it is so cheap, or it is the number one or something, or it may not even come with credibility, particularly new brands, etc. But there's some powerful advertising which goes into through storytelling. Okay, so storytelling and making somebody believe that it is possible, because humans, while we have a lot of beliefs that we carry, are also filled with imagination. So if you are able to tell them stories that connect with them emotionally, and get into the level where their imagination is tickled, where their aspiration is tickled, and that's what I mean by emotion here. That beliefs are not emotions, no, but emotion is what you can use to make people go beyond the incentives to want to change. It's because there's a lot of filled emotions, right? Aspirations, ambition, imagination, joy. These are all powerful emotions, and which is where storytelling plays a big role in getting people to change their beliefs. Okay? Equally, rituals is rituals, again, whether you think of them as spiritual, but also a lot of rituals that are used in corporate world. In the corporate world, we have variety of rituals that are used to change the culture of organizations. So you want to change culture of organization, it will be as simple as how we all dress sometimes. Many organizations may think uniform. No, why do people wear uniforms? Why do we have these T-shirts? Why do we have company T-shirt? A company T-shirt is a ritual. It is a way to make them believe that they are part of something, because everybody wants to be part of something. Again, making them believe loyalty, your their behavior towards loyalty, towards putting in more hard work, happens because of such rituals. When people start to believe that they're part of a group. So there are a variety of those types of examples which are used, and which you can use. Again, there you don't need authority. These are examples of where you use by designing experiences, habit forming, getting them to experience catharsis, or as I said, just intense emotions. And the communication method that is used is storytelling and rituals. So these are the ways you can influence. So to kind of quickly sum up on how does influence happen without authority, the first is you can build authority or derived authority through credibility. Okay? You don't need formal authority, which is what the first category is largely dependent on. The second category is about building authority through your own expertise, credibility, leadership, and therefore getting others to follow you, to emulate you. And the last that we spoke about, which is the second category of influencing without authority, is to use powerful storytelling and the design of experiences and rituals that help people believe something is possible. So you want to tell someone that your product is great and it has these features. That's the first category. It's like you're telling them. It's coming from an authority or someone who has a brochure to offer. But the changing beliefs will only happen when they experience it. So giving them a trial, making them experience it without telling them what the benefits are, if you can get them to experience it, feel the joy of it or feel the wow of it, you have changed their belief, rather than told them to change their behavior. Which is why, again, in a very marketing sense, companies have experience centers, companies do trials, companies offer chances for their customers to experience the product and form habits which then become deep rooted. Right? So that's the kind of examples for the for this. Is there any questions or comments? No, I'm happy to kind of look at them, but I will now move on to the part about our dealing with the boss and understanding the boss. And I've been looking at the questions, so I believe that most of the any additional questions beyond your comments, I have answered them. But if there are any other things, I'll surely address them. Can you explain the rituals content? So the rituals are again about creating habits, right? So people believe that something works. Why do we just think about our daily rituals at home, whether it is religious rituals or even family rituals? People have certain rituals. Rituals are just practices which often may not have any logical sense to them, but people do it because it's habit, it's something that you believe in, and then when you break a ritual is difficult. So when you design rituals, ritual, don't think religious only. Ritual is any practice or a habit that a group of people share, and therefore makes them follow certain things passionately, and they don't want to get out of it, right? So it's habit forming in nature. Corporates do a lot of rituals. So, for instance, the huddle before a match, a cricket team or a football team will huddle. That's a ritual where they all clap their hands and raise their hands and shout out a motto. Is a ritual. It makes you believe in yourself, in the team, without any logic, right? And therefore it does influence behavior. It gets them to be disciplined. It gets them to perform much more than what they're individually capable of. So these are just examples of rituals that are used. in various types of groups. Okay, so now let's move to the boss. Now, I want to take a quick poll here, so I'm just going to check this. So the poll should be on your screens. When you think about your ability to influence or manage your boss today, how would you rate yourself? Okay, so I'm just going to give 6 more seconds. We have a lot of you have voted. Okay, so I'm going to close the poll. Yeah, so those of you who couldn't vote, you can of course share any of your comments on the screen. So 50% of you said good or excellent, mostly good actually, and 38% are average and 11% poor. So about 50% are average or poor, and 46% is good, 5% is excellent. Okay, so that's not bad. At least half of you feel that you have the ability to to influence or manage your boss, which is good. Then what I share with you hopefully will add to your knowledge and give you some more tips. Okay, so let's go into our content about our boss. So when we think about a boss, okay, and I did a Google search, an image search for boss. These were the images that showed up, right? Amongst the top 10, 15 images. These were the prominent images that showed up. So when you think about this word boss, the the adjectives of khadus and all kinds of such words keep coming up in our minds, or sometimes gangster, someone who is extremely ferocious, or someone who is shouting, or conniving, cunning, like that, the baby boss type of image. And that bosses are somehow inferior to this mythical leaders. So that's the central image. So there's so many articles on the web about how a boss is not like a leader, and how leaders, and it kind of wonders who are these leaders who aren't bosses, or vice versa. Uh, the reality is that this is a perception that we all have, and that has been created about this idea of a boss. The reality is that this boss, our boss, your boss, right? The boss whom you think is this devil incarnate, uh, this Khadus person, actually is a team member to a bigger boss, and so on. Everyone is a boss to someone else very often, unless you are like a new entrant into the corporate world and still, but it's a matter of maybe 1 or 2 years. Uh, uh, there's a good question, and I'll come back to that. But you know, when you think about this boss as someone to be managed, the thing is that we are all bosses, unless, as I said, you're a fresher in a corporate. But very quickly you will be a leader, you'll be a supervisor to someone else, and you have a supervisor who will then have a supervisor. Even the CEO has in some senses maybe the chairman as the boss, maybe the promoter of the company as a boss, or the board as a collective as a boss. So everybody has someone else above them who is being demanding. So therefore, when we think about managing our boss, it is a natural thing, and which is why the surprising part at the beginning, that more than 90% of you have never been taught how to manage the boss, because it's somehow seen as a taboo topic. But it is a reality of all of us that we are bosses and we have to manage boss. So if you have to be a good boss, you have to know how to manage your boss. And I will try and kind of help you demystify some of this. There's a good question about why not images for women bosses in the Google search. You're right. I didn't specifically choose those. Although there were some images from some movies that did come up, but majority of the boss images that are used in articles and in the pictures and animations seem to be male bosses, which is unfortunate. Also because probably the bosses are being shown often in these kind of articles as in a negative light, and therefore it feels appropriate to use a male image. I don't know. So whatever the case may be, I will, as I said, in my approach, I have always tried to maintain some balance. So hopefully you'll see that. So the thing is that every boss is actually a confused person, is a worried person. So you look at the questions that are there. Everyone's, you may be thinking this boss is doing all these things to me, is questioning me and troubling me or being a bad person. But the reality is that he or she is also facing the same challenges from the next level, worrying about what is my career going to be like, will I get more money, when will I get promoted, am I doing the right job, I'm too good for my job, I need to be in my boss's shoes. All these are thoughts that we have about our bosses, but that boss is also facing the same set of questions about oneself. So the first thing I want you to realize about managing a boss is remembering that this boss is not one mythical devil incarnate, Gunda type of image that we normally end up seeing when we think about bosses. Bosses is exactly like you, the one who is just one level above, but facing similar issues as others. I'm not talking about, maybe there are some cases where some of them are outright mean people, etc. But that's just the equivalent. You could also be that mean person to your team member, right? So just remember that it's a ladder, and each of us are at just one step of that. Yeah, bosses are not that cruel in general, but it may be like that. So if we want to be successful, and I think the key mantra that I would like you to remember, if you want to be successful in your career, okay, the person who has the biggest influence on your career, on what you can do in future, is right now your boss. Okay? Therefore, if you have to be successful, what do you have to do? You have to help your boss become successful. You have to make your boss successful. It has two reasons. One, if you make your boss successful, hopefully he or she will have something positive for you to do. Two, most of the time when bosses get successful and they get promoted, you get your chance to get promoted. At least you have an opportunity to get promoted. So it is in the best interest of everyone to help their bosses get successful. So I've always treated that if my boss is successful, and when I think of my boss, usually for most people, their boss represents the organization, because everything about the organization comes to them through their boss. So if my boss is successful, I will be successful. I think that's probably one mantra that you can keep in mind. Uh, there's a good point here, and I think I must address it before I move on. Is that when one gets a position of boss, they behave differently what they behaved earlier. That's perfectly all right. They are now in a different position. When they move into that role, of being a boss, they're no longer doing the work that they did earlier. So therefore, their behavior will change. Accept it. Any team member, when you join an organization, I go back to my first days as an employee in a company. I know I said certain things and I felt certain things about my boss, and I realized that I was doing many of the same things to the next batch of people who joined the organization when I had to take the same job. Because when you enter that role, your perspective of what things have to be done changes. That's one. Two, your boss is your role model, so therefore you learn the good things and the bad things from your boss. So if that boss, if that person has learned bad things, he or she will continue to do that to the next level. So it's not surprising. It's like parents do to their children what they hated when their parents doing to them. It's the same thing. It's a cycle. It gets repeated. So we can break it, and that's what I want to talk about. Once we understand what the boss is going through, what that role change often creates as stress points for them, we can then think about how we can help it. Okay. So I've built this framework, okay, of thinking about what do bosses go through, and I had to kind of look at generalizing, because we are talking about bosses at all levels. Each of us is a boss, and we are and in one way we are at the level rung below, but we are bosses to the next level. So keeping in mind that I have to be general, I didn't want to get into just the leaders or just the junior most bosses. I said, what are certain things that are common to all bosses? So here's a framework that's been developed by me. There's no other research to support this. This is based on my experience, anecdotes, etc. So you can agree or disagree with it. I'd love to hear your feedback, but here's the framework that I want to share. Okay, so the, like all good frameworks that we we develop, now I've built a 2x2 matrix. So one type of attitude that most people have, each of us has, and this distinguishes in terms of what role we play as a boss, is that are we detail oriented or are we kind of big picture oriented? Okay? So the detail oriented person, for instance, would still have fond memories of the job that I did before I became the boss. Okay, so I'm still remembering my previous job. I feel I used to, I cracked that, that's why I got promoted, so I know that very well. So they have fond memories of their past, the detail oriented. The big picture oriented is has huge aspirations actually to be the boss's boss. I can be next level. I want to take the big picture. I want to go quickly and become a boss. So I have fond aspirations of slightly bigger picture. I don't like to get into the detail. In fact, that's not what I'm supposed to do. In fact, I should be at even one level higher. So I'm exaggerating the extremes over here, but that's kind of on one axis of how the thinking is happening. The other axis is that at all times I have found people, irrespective of what level they are in or what role they are in, you will find that people are either extremely insecure about where they are, okay? Because they're worried, am I doing well? Am I in the right place? For various reasons, there's a lot of insecurity about their work. On the other extreme, people who are extremely confident that I'm too good for this place or too good for this job. I know everything that needs to be done, and they not only are confident but they demonstrate confidence. The people who are insecure may or may not demonstrate the insecurity, but they are extremely insecure in their mind. Okay, so do you get the kind of the two axes? And then we'll look at the four boss archetypes that I think exist amongst us. Okay, so the first boss archetype is the is on the top left quadrant, who is detail oriented and confident. Usually this person takes a kind of a persona of being a bully, and I'm going to use slightly negative terms for the archetypes, not because they are negative, but this is how they're perceived. Because remember, I told you, we always have this. All of us have, look at our bosses through a negative lens. Therefore, I'm using that the negative aspects of it is what I'm exaggerating. Of course, we'll look at the what to do about it. And I'm going to move a little quickly because we did spend a bit of time on the Q&A and conversations earlier. So let's look at the bully archetype. So extremely confident, but also very detail oriented. I'm sure you've seen such people. These people are always, they have an opinion on everything. They can't let go. They can't delegate easily. But they know the answers. They can solve the problem if you can't, right? Because they've done it very well in the past. And for me, a good example, at least I feel, and I'm going to use some movie. You guys recognize this boss? This movie, any of you? Yeah, it's from When Devil Wears Prada. This is Meryl Streep. So this is the boss who's extremely confident, really superstar in her mind, but also I need to control everything and so on. So that's the nature. So this kind of a person is not always, but very often could end up appearing to be rude, even if he or she doesn't realize I'm being rude. Sounds like a know-it-all, questioning, and the good part of it maybe is questioning from confidence, questioning from experience, but appears to the other person as, why are you questioning me? Why do you have to get into everything yourself? Why do you have to have all the answers? Give me an opportunity. This is what the team member is thinking, right? And therefore the boss in this case appears like a bully, someone who can't let me be. Yeah, it's not 101 Dalmatians. It's When Devil Wears Prada. Okay, so that's the first archetype. We'll look at the solutions for each of them once we've seen the archetypes. The second one, let's come down. So we'll stay with the detail-oriented side, but now the insecure boss. Okay, so this boss is a bit of a nitpicker. Why? So let's look at this, and the example that I have for this is from this movie. Again, any of you recognize this boss? Yeah, I think all of you got it. The intern. She's extremely detail oriented. Uh, she's not insecure because she doesn't know what she's doing, but she's insecure because there's so many things going on in her mind. She has so many people to please. She's thinking about her investors. She's thinking about, do I need to get a CEO, my customers? There's so many things that are going on. So as I said, the insecure is not because you're not good. Insecure is because you have so many things to do, and you're a little torn between all of them. So what does this type of a boss demonstrate? This type of a boss is overworked, is always seems to be stressed out because he or she is getting into the details and is worried that something will go wrong. What if something goes wrong? So there's a lot of confusion. The team work looks like chaos, right? So this place is, and anything you do, because there's a little bit of a perfectionism that also comes in over here. Okay? Detail oriented but insecure. So the confident person may not be a perfectionist, but this person will be a perfectionist, because what if that 1% goes wrong? So let's get to the perfect answer. So you'll find a boss here who's stressed out. There's always, time is a chaos, and nothing seems to be going well, even though a lot of things may be going well, because of the perfectionism, because of their insecurity. That's the second archetype. The third archetype will kind of now go anti-clockwise to the insecure but wants to take the big picture. Okay, so this, I'm like thinking of the grouch, someone who is dissatisfied, someone who would want to delegate and want to get others to do, but is very afraid. What if my team members screw up, and many times I may have experienced my team members screwing up. So I don't want to get into the detail, but I'm forced to get into the detail because I'm always worried, because if my team fails, I am screwed, I am failed. So I need to get this done. You know this boss. You recognize this boss? Because this is a movie that I have probably seen the maximum number of times in my life without wanting to. Yeah, it's the baby's day out. Right? So this is the boss who is always fidgeting, doesn't want to be in the detail, but is forced to, is out of place, and usually sees the rest of the team as a little bit of clowns because they can't get things done. No? So that's, now the good part of this person is this person has big ambitions, wants to do big things, uh, and just needs the confidence. So the lack of confidence is killing this person. Okay? And the final, kind of the confident and big picture oriented. So I will call this person the Godfather. Okay? So who does the Godfather remind me of? Of course, it could be the Godfather from the movie, but I think I will go with Thanos over here. Uh, Thanos, you can, from the movies, you'll remember, has a lot of big picture ideas, very confident, wants to do big things, and also, by the way, is extremely confident enough that he was ready to delegate. He, many attempts, he kind of let others do his work. He was ready to give work to them. Only when the others failed, he said, fine, I'll do it. So he has the confidence, okay, I can do it, but I'd rather not do it. Even if you remember one of the last movie, even when he was in the battlefield, he got a piece of wood and sat down on it because there are others to do the work. Right? I'm confident that they'll do it. So, it's a whether, of course, we may not like the character over here, but is actually the kind of boss that you would want. Someone who wants to focus on the big things and is confident enough to delegate. But the disadvantage is that if you don't deliver here, then you're out, you're killed. There's no mercy for you if you don't deliver. So this is a person who is extremely extremely confident and will let you do things, but you have to deserve their respect. So these are quickly the four archetypes, and of course, I think just understanding what your bosses are going through in their minds and where they are, I think is a very important first step to thinking about how do we address them. And quick test check. I'm going to share a final poll. Your current, or if you're not working right now, your most recent boss, which of these archetypes do you think your boss fits in? The bully, who's confident and detail oriented, the nitpicker, who who is detail oriented but a little bit insecure, the grouch who wants the big picture but is insecure, or the Godfather who's confident and goes after the big picture. I'll just give 10 seconds because we don't have too much time now. And I seem to be getting a decent mix, and that seems to kind of stay. Okay. So 10 seconds more and I'll close the poll. So think about it. Many of you are also probably still thinking or unable to make up your mind. So do spend some time on this because I think it's important for you to figure out. But in fact, I will share the results for this. So 45% of you said Godfather, which is, just surprising and very good, because if you have some a Godfather like profile, extremely confident and wanting to take the big picture as your boss, then you are in good shape. Okay? There are some good things you can do. The others, you have to work with them, but the grouch, which is a kind of the worst case to be in, very few. So I'm happy, that you're all seem to be with working with good bosses. And by the way, don't worry, I know it was anonymous, so you didn't have to worry whether your boss will get this result. So what do you do if you are these four? So for the bully, if you want to deal with the bully, you have to become the dada. I have seen this. I have, by the way, dealt with a bully as my boss, as a boss, one of my bosses. And the only way is that you have to become the dada, because a bully will only face up and will respect someone else who is a dada. What does being a dada mean? That you have to be very good at your job. Remember, this person is extremely confident about the capability. So you have to become good, but not just become good, be confident enough to stand up and push this person away from the detail into the big picture, saying, I know what I'm doing. Please don't question me. Of course, say that only when you're very confident and you're really correct, but you have to be able to stand up to the bully. Yeah, okay. So if you stand up to the bully by being the dada, the bully will respect you and will move away towards the big picture. That's what you want them to do. You want them to move away to the big picture, right? So that's for the bully. For the nitpicker, which is the toughest, by the way, because you want this nitpicker to actually be in the top right quadrant. You have to be like the mentor. Now, it's a little bit of a, it's a doubt. How can I be a mentor to my boss? Now, this is where the capability, and not everyone can deal with this. Then you have to get someone else to be a mentor to the boss, help the boss get a mentor. But the intern shows you how the movie. Those of you who haven't seen it, please do see it. I think it's a good dynamic of a young boss, detail oriented but insecure, and how and now a senior citizen comes in as an intern and is able to help the boss become extremely confident, and focus on the big picture and leave others to do it. Right? I think that being a mentor, bringing some calmness to the discussion, being some consistency, I think is very important. How do you deal with the grouch? I can think of the role as that of being an inverter. Right? The problem for the grouch is, now he needs a backup. He wants to do the big picture, but he's insecure about this. So he's looking for the fail safe, he or she. So therefore, you have to be that inverter, right? or the generator or the backup, that says, I'm here for you. Don't, no, I will do the detail. I'll work on the detail. You focus on your big picture. I'm going to lift you up. So the backup or the inverter provides reliability. So you have to be extremely reliable and show this person that he or she doesn't have to get into the detail, because the danger of this grouch is that he or she will get into the detail because of the insecurity. You want them to build confidence. And then finally, for the godfather, you have to be a partner. You have to be like a co-founder. This person has a lot of ideas, big picture, so you have to complement this person. You can't be one more godfather. No, there's only one godfather. But can you be like a partner, a co-founder, someone who complements? It says, I'll bring the execution capability if you are the dreamer. I will help you in implementation. Whatever is your support. So this is a very quick, and this is something that we can go into more detail. I wanted to make sure that you all understood the concept, and that's really what I want to share. As I said, there's a lot of stuff that we are doing in this space, and any questions or comments, I would love to take them. But the key thing to summarize for me is that influence is good. It is not a bad thing. Influence is getting others to change their behavior the way you want them to do it. And if you don't have authority, whether it is your boss or whether it is other people, your customers, you have to, one, build credibility and use the power of storytelling in driving influence. And finally, when it comes to your boss, remember your boss is as insecure often or is worried about their role as you might be. Therefore, understanding what they're going through and how you play the role to enable them to move to that top right quadrant of being a confident, big picture person, whereas you manage everything else for them, is what you have to understand and build on. If there are any questions, in a few minutes I can take. I'm happy to do that. I just want to also highlight that thank you to Nasscom, FutureSkills. It's a wonderful initiative that has been put up to help professionals build both technical and soft skills, professional skills. We are very proud to be a part of this platform. In fact, we have a free course that now that's done by me, that's available on the platform. It's called Connecting the Dots. So you can go to FutureSkills Prime .in and actually check the courses out, and also the Connecting the Dots course that we have made available for free. And we have many other courses that are coming up soon on on the Prime platform. So both in strategy, communication, managing teams, managing stakeholders. So Global Gyan has lots of courses that we are putting on the platform. So we would love for you to go there and experience. And of course, if there are other topics that you're interested in, as Global Gyan, we also do lots of courses in managerial and leadership development. Do go to our website to get more details. It's globalgyan.in. And I hope to engage with all of you in future sessions. Do also share your feedback about this session on LinkedIn. Go to the FutureSkills Prime page or the Global Gyan page and share your feedback on what we're doing. I have a few questions that I'll just take quickly. How to handle if the boss is lower grade in position, managerial, than higher grade technical. So so I think you'll find that if the person is kind of in a lower grade, there's a lot of insecurity. So you have to recognize that insecurity and see how can I help the boss overcome the insecurity. Don't let your higher capability be an additional cause of insecurity. You have to then play that mentor role or the complementer role. So depending on where they are in, but if you see the insecurity side of and I'll maybe just put the matrix back, right? So if anyone is on the insecurity side for various reasons, you have to complement them, you have to help them. You can't let that insecurity kill you, right? So what if a boss does not have enough experience? Yeah, same thing, right? If they can't become a role model, I agree, but they are in that role because of some of their strengths. So one of the ways is to go work with the boss to learn from their strengths, whichever has caused them to be there, and then offer your strength, not as I want to show off, but I can help you do these things, I will manage these things, rely on me for these things. And that's something that many bosses are happy to. They are overworked, they are worried about their future. So if you help them in any way, they'll be more than happy to. What's the movie for the mentor? It's called The Intern. So it's available, I think, on most of the platforms. You can find it. What do you suggest? People who have bully boss? Yeah, it's 20% people have bullies. I think the only way to deal with a bully is that you have to become extremely capable and confident. So I mean, if you are extremely capable, then you also have to become articulate in your confidence. So let me give you an example. A bully type of a boss will immediately want to put the other person down because I know everything, right? And if that other person goes in scared, the bully feels extremely gratified because my assumption about you has been reinforced because you said, okay, sir, yes, sir, please tell me what to do, sir. However, if you stand up, or it could be, okay, ma'am, please tell me what to do, ma'am, whichever. But if you say, you know what, I don't agree, how many times, if you have a bully as a boss, are you ready to say, I don't agree? Now, if that person is not a bully because they're a bad person, but a bully because that's their attitude, they're so strong, they're so good, they'll be taken aback, they'll be a bit rude. But if you can stand your ground, that's why I said you have to stand up, you have to stand your ground, and then put your point across. Maybe not in that meeting because that person is not ready to, then send across a note, do something to show the bully that you can stand your ground, that you have a point of view, that you'll stick with it. And if that person is unwilling to accept any other alternate point of view, then you should change your boss, right? There's no doubt. By the way, all of these, the assumption is that your boss is inherently a good person like any of us, facing the same insecurities and the same dilemmas, the same problems that all of us go through as managers. If that person is an outright rude person, or a completely uh, poor ethics person, then yeah, that's I'm not going there at all. That's why people change their jobs, right? When they say you change your boss, kind of thing. Um, Vibhu, I know you're referring to the MBTI assumption. I'm not a fan of that, and I don't really, I don't connect with it at all. So unfortunately, I won't be able to help you. And also, don't try to, by the way, try to determine what type of a boss is good for you. Most of the time, you will have a boss. That's a reality. Okay? You will have a boss. You have to understand what type is the boss, and you have to change yourself to work with your boss. Don't try to change your boss to fit you. I think that's a little. Well, how long will you do it? Then you will be always choosing roles that are not appropriate for you, right? So don't try to choose a boss that works for you. I think it's important for us to know how we can change ourselves to work and manage the relationship to work with the boss. Usually in that process, the boss also changes. If you are able to, as I said, you can push the boss up to a different quadrant over here if you work with them. It's very comforting to say, oh, I'm like this, I choose a boss who fits me. It's not a swayamvar that is happening often in terms of you can choose your boss. That would be my suggestion. Okay, I think most questions I've answered. Even if we haven't, reach out to me on LinkedIn and connect with me. I'll be more than happy to continue the conversation outside of this live platform. We can, my name is Srinivas Addepalli. You'll find me as Addepalli on all platforms. So feel free to connect with me, and look forward to your comments and questions later also. Thank you very much, and let me hand this back to the team from Nasscom FutureSkills.
Thank you, Srini. It was like an amazing, very insightful session, and I hope the audience also had the same, seeing the interaction level of the audience. Thank you, audience. A recorded version of this webinar will be emailed to all the attendees after the webinar gets over. Thank you, everyone. I've also posted the link for Prime in the chat window here. Please do go there, visit, and make the maximum out of the courses available. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.